Broadsword calling Danny boy.
Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another game of Interplanetary I Spy going on here. Today I'm going to go back over something I touched on in a previous video a few days ago, from 186, Sol 186. The link will be underneath in the description as usual, and all the links for these images will be there, so you can just click on them and download the image yourself and check. So yeah, we'll crack straight on with it. I've got this image here from Sol 186. I've got another one next to it, which is this one, which is right next to it, almost covering the same spot but slightly further over. I've got a whole bunch of things here. Right, now the gun camera. I thought I would do some enhancements on the gun camera because it's one of the best. There's the gun camera just here. It's one of the best mechanical objects that's ever been found on Mars, I think. And I think it was found a few years ago by Michael Witter. Check out his channel. He made some really good videos a few years ago, and then sort of went off the radar and hasn't made any since. But he did uncover quite a lot of stuff in a few of his videos, and this is what I think one of his finds. Lots of people have done videos on this. It's been interpreted as a robot arm or leg or a foot or some kind of mechanical device. It is definitely mechanical, that's for sure. I'll show you some of the enhancements I've got in a minute. Let's go into Paint Shop Pro here. Now these are the source images I just showed you. There's two here. They both kind of show the same area. Now if you look at this one, this is the front end of the bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of crashed aircraft wreckage here, which I spoke about in the previous video. There's a nose section. Let's go in the center there. There's a nose section here. Loads and loads of little bits of wreckage here. Let's get in close. All twisted and covered in mud and sort of fossilized. I mean, this was underwater at one point, so this was probably covered in silt and clay and whatever else. When the water dried out, it was left behind and is solidified and baked in the sun and then frozen. Basically fossilized. But you've got this very interesting bit of mechanical wreckage here, and there's another part of this thing just here. You can see with teeth on it. There's 3 teeth on this thing, 3 or 4 teeth, and there's another part of it here with some teeth sticking out. Now I don't know what that is. It's definitely mechanical in nature, and this seems to look like it was part of this thing here because it's about the same sort of size, and I think that kind of joined onto it. So this would have been a larger object that's kind of broken in half. I've no idea what it is. It's some kind of gearing or some kind of mechanical part, possibly to do with this aircraft wreckage here. Now one thing that struck me was that a lot of this wreckage looks extremely old. It could have been there for 1 million years, could have been there 10,000 years, don't know. And it's obviously got fossilized and hardened and encrusted over many years. But this mechanical thing here, which I'm going to call the gun camera, is much shinier and in much better condition than anything else in the surrounding area. So maybe nothing to do with this wreckage just behind it at all. As I've said in many videos before, a lot of the wreckage and debris and artifacts in Gale crater are all kind of mixed up and jumbled up, and you often find unrelated wreckage next to other pieces of wreckage which may or may not be related to it. So there's absolutely no way of telling whether this is actually anything to do with anything in the surrounding area. But there are lots of other interesting anomalies in these pictures. There's lots of little nuts and bolts and metallic objects with nuts and bolts in them. There's what looks like a little lizard just here. I mean, all this stuff is very small, so you're never going to get a great deal of detail. But one thing I didn't point out in the previous video was the fact that there seems to be, on this nose section here, there's a sort of ball-shaped thing on the end. Now this looks very much like it could be some kind of gyroscopic guidance system like you would get in a missile. So this may well be a missile. Like I said before, it may be a almost like a Scud missile type thing that's hit the ground and broken up and fossilized over many years. One thing I didn't point out was that right in front of it is there's a kind of bent propeller here. I don't know if you can see that there. It's very vague when you zoom in. But I've got some enhancements here, which I'm going to run through in a minute, and I'll show you all this stuff. I've done a lot of work on some of these parts because I thought they warranted a bit more detail and a bit more enhancements, so that you can see what we're looking at. Because the original video I done on this stuff was almost 2 years ago, and it's pretty good, but I can do better now. There's also loads of other stuff up here. There's loads of fossils up here. There's a fossilized dinosaur skull here. See the eye socket there? That's an eye socket. And there seems to be lots of bones. This could be a flying dinosaur, this one. There seems to be bones and long arm and leg bones sort of fossilized into the rock here. There's a very strange thing here. That could be some kind of fossilized creature, or it may be some more wreckage. There's so much jumbled up here. It's really hard to tell what's actually aircraft wreckage and what's actually dinosaur fossils or other creature fossils. There's tons of stuff in here. This looks here like a part of an aircraft engine or some kind of structure. There's some square pieces to it here. I'm going to show you some enhancements now. I'll come back to some of this stuff. If I don't show you the full enhanced stuff of all this stuff now, I will put it in the end of the video. So I'll clip some of these bits out for you and do my usual enhancements and really try and get as much detail out of these as possible. But I'm not going to take too long in the initial part of the video here, because some of my videos have been getting very long, because in some of these areas there is so much stuff in some of the images and some of these sets of images that often you need to do a long video to fit it all in. But today I'm going to try and keep it short. So there's that image there. Now this is the adjacent image, and if you look at this here, this big lump of stuff with bits of wire sticking out and stuff like that, and metal parts encrusted into it. You can see it in this one as well. You can just see the edge of it here. So this is slightly further to the left, this one, and you can see the parts of the fuselage of some kind of sort of missile or airplane. It could have been a propeller-driven aircraft. It could have been quite an old-fashioned aircraft. Don't know. There seems to be what looks like bits of wiring and maybe piping and stuff going through this wreckage here, and lots of interesting stuff. There's loads of this stuff. It looks like wiring and perhaps it had hydraulic piping going through it or something for the flight control system, perhaps. But it does look very much like a crashed aircraft. It's not huge. As I said in the previous video, I thought this thing was really big, but it's not that big. But as a lot of people are saying now, maybe the Martian pilots were very small, and lots of people are finding evidence of quite small Martians, between about 9 and sort of 18 inches tall or something like that. I don't know. Some of these things may be much smaller than we think. I mean, this isn't huge, and this does explain why a lot of these things are very blurry and hard to see in a lot of these images, because they're a lot smaller than we think they are, and it's very difficult when you look at this stuff. This is an enhanced version of that previous image. I've sharpened it and put the contrast up and stuff like that, so you can actually see a bit more detail here. I'll go in a bit closer. So the thing we're concentrating on is this mechanical object here mainly, because it's very clear. It doesn't look that clear now. It looks a bit blurred, as all Curiosity images seem to be blurred. This is probably deliberate on their part. Also, they've been resized badly as well. But I managed to get rid of the compression lines in here by using a Gaussian blur I don't know if you have that on your software. You go to blur, and there should be a Gaussian blur there, and depending on how poor the image is, I usually tend to use something like 1 radius of 1, or I've got some presets here that I've set up. Usually 1 or 1.2 or 0.75, or a bit more. If they're really bad, you go to sort of 1.6, 1.8, or even 2. And if they're terrible, you go out to sort of 2.6 or even 3. But rarely do I go above about 1.2 or 1.4. And that usually sorts out these images. If you do that straight off the bat and give it some blur, I'll show you how that works now. I'll get the raw image here. Now when you zoom in, I'll zoom into you can see these blocks where it's been resized. I think what they do is they do a pixel resize initially with the image, and then they enlarge it back up from an image that's been pixel resized. So what happens there is you get these big blocks and squares everywhere. Can you see them? See these blocks? I think that's something to do with the resizing of the images. Now obviously these images must be high def when they're initially taken by the mass cam, but before they go on the website, they downsize them and possibly resize them up again as well at some stage in the process. And this is what ruins most of the information in the images. But you can just Gaussian blur that, and it will get rid of most of it. I'll just show you that now. Blur, 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 Gaussian blur. Okay, let's go with 1.2. Now that looks very blurred now, but what you can do after that is then play with the contrast. You can really sort of play with the contrast and white balance it, or change the color temperature, make it a bit bluer, make it more like a sunlight on Earth sort of effect, like so. And that's kind of what I normally do. And you can see I've done that here. Let's move that one out of the way now. I'll undo that because I don't want to keep that because I've already done it on this one. So that's how I get to this, and that really improves the image. Now you can look at it and it's hardly blurred, or I mean, there aren't all those blocks in there, and then you can really look at this stuff better. But if you get in too close, obviously it's not great. But here's one of those objects I was on about with the teeth, and another one here, and there's all this wreckage. Here's the gun camera. Right, now I'm going to show you the enhancements I've done in this. Now you can tell it's a manufactured object just by the shapes of these parts to it. Now I call it a gun camera because this part here on the right, this large section, looks like the type of thing that was you would get on a gun camera or a very large camera, like a film camera, and the film would actually go in there. So if this is a gun camera, and it may not be, it's not a digital camera. It's an old school analog style camera, like a film camera might be from, say, the 1960s or something like that. That kind of thing. I don't have any comparison images up of cameras. I'll get some in a second. Let's have a look through some of the edits I've done. Okay, right. Well, this is heavily enhanced. This is the object with teeth in it, and it is blatantly mechanical because rocks do not have teeth inside them like this. I'll show you some of the other edits I've done of it quickly. And all I've done is I've drawn around it and enhanced this section here, this part, and up to the color temperature. The rest of it is grayscale first, and then I selected that and enhanced it, and that really makes it stand out. If you get in too close, it doesn't get any sharper, but that's the sort of detail you can get if you know what to do. There's some different edits here, different color temperature edits here, different color filters. Here's the gun camera. Now that's what it looks like when you clip it out, and this has been enlarged as well, so it's not very sharp. But you can see the blocks in here where it hasn't been. I haven't blurred this yet. It's very blocky and distorted. But even so, because it's quite a large object and it's quite close to the camera, it's only about 10 feet away from the rover. It's quite close up. Probably less than 10 feet away. It's pretty clear, even though this is just a raw image. it's a very shiny object. It's got it's made out of some sort of metal alloy, which looks kind of golden almost. And when you enhance it, it goes very gold and shiny, as I'll show you now. I'll show you the enhancements. There we go. Now, what I've done here is I've done the same thing. I've grayscaled it first. I've drawn around it, increased the color temperature, and I've gone in with a sharpen tool, sharpen brush, and carefully gone over it to pick out the lighter parts. And there's little nuts and bolts in here. There even, I mean, this just may be pixelation, but there even seems to be a little cross shape in that one there, like a Phillips kind of posi drive screw almost. And this one here, see the little dark cross shape in here. Now that may be down to pixelation, I don't know, but it's an interesting bit of detail, and it does ask a lot of questions because this is blatantly a manufactured object, and it is one of the best objects you'll see on Mars. It's very shiny. The foot thing here looks like it slots into something like under an aircraft, or perhaps onto a stand or a tripod, or who knows. And it has a bracket here at the back. If you look at this detail here, this looks like it would probably attach to something, or something would attach to it. And there seems to be a bracket here where it possibly could bolt on to something there. And you've got this, the foot is a very convincing shape. That looks like it may slot into something, or sit on something where it slots in like a stand, or some kind of housing underneath an airplane wing, or who knows. But whatever this thing is, it may not be a camera, it could be a robot leg, it could be a robot arm, it could be some other piece of equipment. Whatever it is definitely manufactured, and it's definitely metallic, and it's not a rock. And it's blatantly one of the clearest anomalies you'll ever see on Mars. And no one's really done any major enhancements on it like this before, as far as I know. I didn't go mad on this. I took a bit of time. I drew around it, and I just sharpened it up carefully. I picked out the lighter parts and the darker parts, and just enhanced it. And I sharpened it and softened it a little bit, and blurred it, and then sharpened it again to get that sort of level of detail. I mean, if you go in too close, it doesn't really get any better. But it does give you a good idea of what's going on. You can see how it's being constructed here, this part here, and there's a bit sticking out here. That looks like some kind of clip or sort of bracket, and then it seems to be some kind of bracket or clip here as well, perhaps where it attached to something. Who knows? I mean, there could even be some film in here, or if you took this apart, I'm sure there'd be loads of electronics inside, perhaps even a motherboard and some computer parts. Who knows what it is, but I like to think it's a gun camera because it looks very similar to one, and it's very golden, it's very shiny, metallic object, obviously manufactured, without any doubt whatsoever. I don't know what it is, but I'm just kind of trying to think out loud here and trying to give you some ideas. If you guys have got any ideas what this thing might be, please leave a comment, because I'm open to suggestions on this. I'm just trying to give you my point of view on this. I could be wrong, but it looks like some sort of camera or gun camera, not unlike something you might see fitted on an aircraft in World War II or in the 1950s or 60s. There's a few of the enhancements here. I'm just flicking through them. See, that's it with it. Before I sharpened it manually, this has just been drawn around. That's one of the early edits, E2B, yeah. And there's the nose section of what may be an aircraft here, and I've highlighted here what looks like a little propeller, a bent propeller with 4 blades, 1, 2, 3, 4. Part of it's obscured here. This is all bent and broken by the looks of it, but that looks to me a bit like a propeller. I have found other propellers on the surface. Some of them on the back of massive, one of them on the back of a massive submarine, one on the back of a huge ship. So, it's not the first propeller I've found. It's not very big. It's probably only like 5 inches across or something. So it could be from the cooling fan system. It could be not a main propeller from an engine, but perhaps from an internal fan of some sort. Who knows? And this nose section, this is enhanced, not heavily, but it's enhanced. You can see what would be a circular kind of panel here, and this looks very much like it's this circular thing here is on a sort of gimbal, like a universal, like a joint here where it may kind of spin around inside. Now this could be part of a guidance system on a missile or airplane. It could even be a radar or some sort of spying device which turns round inside the nose of the aircraft or missile. It could have some sort of camera on the front. It could be part of the guidance system where it has a sort of infrared technology where it homes in on targets and follows it. Because it certainly looks here like it's on a gimbal, which means it could turn round. Do you see there? Just there where it's joined on. So you've got to look at this stuff in a lot of this stuff in a sort of military fashion, really, because a lot of it does look like military wreckage. That's the raw image, E1. Yeah, that's raw. So even the raw image is pretty clear. You can see that that's a sort of propeller-shaped thing. You can see that this is not just a rock. It has what look like metallic parts to it and sections to it. And this looks like some kind of thing on a gimbal, like maybe a camera or a guidance system or something like a gyro. Could be a gyro in there, you know. Here's that other object with the teeth. There's an overview. So I haven't done tons of enhancements on this stuff. I'll just show you some more edits from here. There's a bunch of these edits. These were my favourite. I didn't spend ages on this, but I spent a few hours work on these objects. And there are lots of other objects nearby. This thing here, on the bottom left here, looks like a piece of something. It could be metallic, it could be a broken piece of pottery, it could be anything. Who knows what that is? But yeah, there's loads of stuff in here. And well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll show you it in Paint Shop again. We'll zoom in on here and have a look at some of these other things. There seems to be a skull here as well. Just here. Let me enhance that for you now. Let's darken that up. See what comes out. Because a lot of the time this stuff is quite bright. You've really got to darken it up and get the contrast in there. Yeah, that looks like some kind of skull, or it could be part of the wreckage, but it has teeth here. See, 1, 2, 3. See those 3 teeth? 1, 2, 3. And it's kind of symmetrical. It could be the back of it. This could be the back end of the skull here, and this could be the nose end of the skull, and this could be an eye socket here, and these could be teeth. And there seems to be some more teeth down here. Let me sharpen that a little bit for you. Let's just sharpen it manually. There we go. See what I'm getting at now? There's some pretty good detail in there. I didn't spot this before when I made the original video, which was well over a year ago, about a year and a half ago. I completely overlooked this. I was so busy looking at the gun camera thing that I missed this. So it's good to come back to stuff that you've done in the past sometimes and have another look at it. So that looks like a skull. I'll do a proper clip of this and enhance it properly for you, and I'll put it in the end of the video, as I will with a lot of this other stuff. And you know, some of the details in here are really, really quite fascinating. And the dinosaur skull. Let's do that quickly for you now. Let's just sharpen him up. Darken him up first, up the contrast and darkness. Go in quite dark. That's a bit too dark. Okay, let's sharpen him up again. I'm just doing this real quick. I'll do some proper enhancements of these things. I'm sticking them in the end of the video. There's definitely something interesting there. That looks to be like a dinosaur skull, as I've said before in other videos. when you zoom out, you can kind of see the eye socket there, in the middle there. That looks like a dinosaur skull, for possibly of a flying dinosaur, because there's lots of other what look like fossilized wings here, animal wings, reptilian wings or something, and there's tons and tons of little fossils and stuff up here. Up here, loads of bones and little funny objects that look very, very much like fossilized bones. But the problem is you've got a mixture of dinosaur and animal bones mixed up with what look like aircraft wreckage, and sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. This is often the problem on Mars. I mean, that looks like a skull now when you look at it from that distance. See the teeth? It's a skull facing away from us, facing up that way, lying on its side. And there's loads of stuff in these rocks here. Some what look like fossils and interesting structures in these rocks. Let's just quickly have a look at that. There's a nice circular pattern to that. It could be something, may not be. Let's darken them up a bit. Let's go in quite dark. Okay, that should do it. And then we'll sharpen it. So, yeah, I mean, I found lots of fossils. And this may just be a natural formation. I don't really know. It's hard to say with that. I would have to do a proper enhancement of that to see if it comes out. Yeah, it looks interesting. There's certainly some interesting stuff in these rocks. Some of them have fossils in them. Some of the fossilized parts seem to be just lying around. Fossilized bones. There's loads of stuff in here. A lot of it's pretty blurry and vague. But there is an awful lot of stuff here. And this wreckage, even though it's encrusted in mud, you can kind of make out metallic parts and sections to it, which is all kind of ripped and torn and damaged. And there's all sorts in here, you know. There's tons of stuff. So I won't linger too long on it. I'll show you the enhancements at the end of the video. In this one here, there was what looks like a kind of aircraft engine. It may not be in this one. Hang on a minute. Yeah, now, what you've got to do sometimes is cross-reference other sets of images. And I have up here another image from a different set, which is Sol, let's say 138. Now, this is an overview of the area that we've just looked at. This is Sol 138. And this is the area we're looking at here. This is where the aircraft wreckage is, just along here, and there's some more further over to the left here, right next to the tsunami fossil rock, which I've done a video on a while back, which is full of fossils. But there seems to be here, and it doesn't show up in those other source images, just here. Let's go in full and see if we can zoom into that. See this object just here? What I'll do is I'll zoom in a bit and see if we can get that up close, because that object seems to be a part of an engine or engine lock or something. Here it is, just here. This seems to have something sticking out a bit, like an engine part or something. Perhaps the propeller was joined onto this. Don't really know. I'll try and I'll do some more enhancements of this. I'll clip this out and enhance it and see if it matches up with that propeller. But there's loads and loads of stuff in here, and a lot of it's quite small. There's a lot of rocks also in there as well, but there's all sorts of little fossils and components lying around. Loads of it, all kind of just thrown on the ground. This was probably underwater for quite some time, and then dried out, and then encrusted, and fossilized. There's tons of stuff in here. So right, well, some other things I wanted to point out. There are dinosaurs, they're dinosaur fossils on Mars, and I showed you one just here a minute ago, just up here. It's not very big. This could well be a flying dinosaur, and you can see some of these long kind of bones sticking out the back of it here. See these long sort of curved things here? These look like long bones, or perhaps arm bones with perhaps even what were wings sticking out the back here. I could be wrong, but this looks like it may well be a flying dinosaur. like a, what will they call, pterosaur, a kind of pterosaur perhaps. So I may clip some of this out and do some more enhancements of that as well for you to put in the end of the video. There's so much in here that it's hard to get it all across in one sort of short video. So I'll go through this and I'll clip all this stuff out and I'll show you the enhanced clips at the end. A quick few things in the news as well. I was looking at earlier. This is the big story at the moment. Curiosity watches the Martian clouds drift by. Oh, what a surprise, there's clouds on Mars. Ooh, yeah, well, okay. Like I wasn't saying that years ago on my website, you know. Of course there are clouds on Mars. They're a long way up, they're pretty thin, but there are clouds on Mars. Why do I know this? Because if you look at enough Curiosity images, you will find that a lot of them are much, much darker, and the only thing that could explain that is the fact that there are clouds going over and blocking out the sunlight. And many sets of images, not all of them, but quite a few, you get a load of images that all have the same luminosity to them. They're all the same sort of brightness and stuff. And right in the middle of the set, you would get like 10 images which are completely in shadow. And the only thing that could possibly do that would be clouds, because most of these images, the Curiosity is right out in the open on fairly flat, or slightly uneven ground in Gale crater. And often the whole image goes quite dark for 5 minutes. The whole set of images will go dark, and then it goes back to being light again. So that's clouds. I've known this for a long time, and this is more evidence to back my theory up. And I think they're basically drip feeding us some of this stuff to try and kind of get us used to the idea that there might be something more up there than we've been told. Who knows what they're up to? Nobody knows what NASA are up to, really. And there was another thing I did mention in previous videos. I've got lots of animals that I found up on the surface, and people have said, oh, there can't possibly be animals on Mars. Well, there could have been. I'm not saying there are any live now. There's not much evidence for living animals, although some people, I do have 1 or 2 specimens that look that they may be moving around, like snakes and stuff like that. I think Will at What's Up in the Sky 37 channel, he's got one of his videos has had about 250,000 hits of what looks like some kind of weird snake creature dashing across the sand, a bit like a sidewinder. I've found what looks like a sidewinder snake as well. So there may be small creatures still alive up there. And you may ask how they survive in such cold conditions. Well, it's not always cold on Mars. It is at night. If you live in the polar regions, it's very, very cold indeed, at minus 190 degrees or thereabouts. But if you live in Gale crater, which has its own microclimate, it gets quite warm during the day, and if there is any ice, it may melt, so there'll be liquid water in small areas. I'm not saying the place is teeming with life now. It's probably largely dead, and judging by all the fossils and skulls and everything, that's what it seems to be. There's a lot of debris and animal fossils all over the place. I've found hundreds myself. Lots of other people have found them as well, not just me. But this article interested me because this goes on about various creatures that can survive extreme temperatures and freeze and then come back to life again. There are various types of frogs that have antifreeze in their skin, in their blood and stuff, that when they can freeze for years and years, completely frozen, and then they can, when the ice melts, they come back to life. You can check this out for yourself. Natural antifreeze. Now, creatures on Mars may well have a very similar thing. They may well have blood that is very, very different to ours. They may have extremely different respiratory systems to us. People say, well, there can't be any life up there because there's not enough oxygen. Okay, well, they may not even breathe oxygen. They may have a very, very different system for breathing and extracting air than we do. They may not even rely on oxygen. They may be able to process carbon dioxide. We really don't know. They are alien. But I thought this was interesting. This is the frog that comes back to life, and they can be frozen for years and years and then come back to life. There's another article here, Dying to Live Another Day. There's lots of small creatures that can survive being frozen in ice for thousands of years, little tiny bugs. Microbes, of course, microbial life, can probably survive in ice for millions of years. And when the ice melts, they come back to life. There are certain types of microbes that have a coating on their outer cell wall that has a type of have certain minerals in it that actually acts like an antifreeze, which means they can move through the ice very, very slowly, even frozen ice, at extremely low temperatures. And what it does is it just melts the ice around them, and they slowly move through like a probe. So they sort of melt their way through. They have these special chemicals in there on the cell wall of the microbe, and they can melt it as they go. So they're constantly in liquid water, even though they're in ice. The part they're in is actually unfrozen. So now this may well be the case on Mars. The lungfish, and they're very interesting fish. This one, they found lungfish that have been in dried up lake beds and river beds in Africa and various other parts of the world, America, South America. The lake bed or river will dry out. There may be a drought for 5 or 10 years, 20 years even. And when it rains, these things will bury themselves in the mud, and the mud protects them, encases them. And then the lake bed or river will dry out, and then many, many years later, it rains, and then they come back out. They are reborn, like the phoenix from the flames. They come back out of the mud and swim away, completely frozen in a sort of cryogenic, not cryogenic, but almost in a sort of state of cryogenic stasis. There's loads of these creatures that can do this. This is the striped burrowing frog. This is, I think, one of the ones that can survive being frozen for many, many years. And they've done experiments in laboratories with these guys, and they can be frozen for years, and then they can defrost them and they come back to life. They literally go into a sort of life support mode, and the metabolism slows right down, and to all intents and purposes you would think they were dead, but they're not. Lots of insects can do it as well. This mountain stone weta is a type of insect, that kind of cricket, which can survive being frozen for long periods of time. So it may well be similar on Mars. There may be some small creatures that can survive extremely cold conditions and can survive it under the permafrost or in dried out lake or river beds. And when the ice melts, which it obviously does on Mars at some point, certain times of the year, then this water could reinvigorate them and bring them back to life. So this is quite possible. It is absolutely possible. And they may not even need oxygen. We don't know. Nobody knows. Everyone assumes that everything has to breathe oxygen. We have loads of things down on Earth that don't breathe oxygen. We have lots of plants. We have, various types of fungi and plants. They use carbon dioxide. They don't need oxygen. So it's all possible. We don't really know what's going on up there. And people that say, oh, there's only rocks on Mars. Yeah, okay. If you think there's just rocks on Mars, then don't come on this channel, because there obviously isn't. And there's manufactured objects. There are fossils, there are skulls, there are even desiccated animal corpses, there are carved artifacts, there are buildings, there are aircraft, there are ships, there are all manner of things you can imagine. And some of them are very small. This is quite small. And some of them are very, very big, like some of the things I've published recently. This is the old video of that dinosaur. This isn't a brilliant quality image, but you can see it there. There's loads and loads of dinosaur stuff on Mars. Not loads, but I found quite a lot so far. There's this footprint I found. This is in a different video I posted a while back. Mars dinosaur footprint and bones. Huge dinosaur footprint, this. You can see it there. There's all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff. There it is in negative. You can see it clearer now. It actually comes out more here. I didn't actually select the whole thing there. There's another toe print here. Now, this could easily be corroborated by a detailed photograph. If the rover went up to this thing closely and zoomed in and used some of its micro cameras and stuff like that, you would actually probably be able to see the dermal ridges, which there are here. Dermal ridges are almost like fingerprints, which you get on feet and hands of all creatures, and you would be able to see these dermal ridges in much greater detail, which would mean that it's a footprint and not just a random rock formation. This looks very much like a footprint, and I have found others. Other people seem to have found them as well. This is the biggest one I've found. This is really, really quite huge. It says in the video it's about 50 inches. It may not be quite that big, but it may even be bigger. Don't really know exactly. It's quite a long way off in the background, this one. So yeah, there's lots of evidence for these things. And if you look at my recent series of videos, I've got loads of aircraft and ships. The Mars Navy series has got tons of evidence of really large finds in it. Like I said before, the Mars Navy series, I did a whole bunch of these. And there's the Mount Sharp series. They're all Mount Sharp videos. There's about 12 I've done now on Mount Sharp. And there's loads and loads of boats and aircraft and ships and even a submarine. And they've got huge propellers, some of them. All sorts of stuff. I think you can hear my stomach rumbling now. I really apologise about that. I haven't had anything to eat for lunch yet. So I think I'll call it a day there. That pretty much covers everything. Thanks for watching, everybody. And I'll see you soon.